Just a moment, almost back. I don't know what happened. My OBS audio froze. I don't know how just part of a program can freeze, but I guess it did. All right, we're good again. Welcome back. I don't think I asked you guys to hit the like button, share, subscribe, and consider becoming a patron, which you can also... I offer consultation if you'd like private instruction in any of the stuff that I talk about, including guitar lessons. And we're also confirming retreats for September. We have one room still open. You can come for any part of it. You don't have to come for the whole month. And in November, there's going to be morel and wild and medicinal, but especially morels. I'm going to be out looking for the morels. So between ceremony, we'll be out in the Andes picking morels and other mushrooms. And I make some amazing dishes with these things. One of them is a white wine cream reduction sauce with black pepper, Asiago cheese, bacon, asparagus. I used to do it with wild asparagus in Colorado, and scallops or shrimp or both. It is the best thing you'll ever put in your mouth. Angel hair pasta, phenomenal. So that's November for the entire month, and in May we're going to Manu in the rainforest for a month. And so, yeah, that's happening. Join us. So I don't know exactly where we were. I know somebody put in the other chat that I had been cut off right after I said I should have opened with this, but I don't remember what that was. Probably the function of the magician or the shaman in a modern context. You know, it really is a mess. It really is a mess out there because we have so much misinformation. We have a lot of pressure from gatekeepers, and I don't know what these creatures are. These like new agey, uber judgy, usually white liberal, neo-hippie kind of creatures that put a tremendous amount of pressure on people to conform with things that are not real, that are just industry stereotypes, that are pop culture stereotypes. You know, and then now that we have the profit motive kind of added into the whole stew, you know, it's really a difficult morass that we have to wade our way through as people that are becoming interested in these things, as practitioners. For me, it doesn't really matter. You know, I have my YouTube audience that I pretty much exclusively work with, so they're all like-minded people. And if I have a screen for a retreat or something and you're not a good fit, then you won't come. And so, you know, it's simple for me, but I empathize with people that are on the other end of this, where they might, you know, need a guide for the medicine or some other aspect of their development. They need some, you know, or neophyte, new interest, because it really is a corny-ass mess out there. You know, we have one of the systems that we've lost is that of hierarchy. And although I don't really approve of hierarchy in the sense of putting a shaman on a pedestal or having a cult leader type dispensing knowledge according to their own agenda or whatever, but it is true that we don't have an association that can test people and determine whether they are actually legitimate. Any you know, new agey, neo-hippie, you know, housewife can drink a cup of ayahuasca and suddenly decide that she's the reincarnation of Cleopatra and, you know, has the capacity to past life regressions. And, you know what I mean? There's no way to ascertain any kind of qualifications for these people. And in my experience going around PSOC and Mount Shasta and all this, nearly 100% of them are fake flakes that should not be doing anything for anyone. And they're not. They're taking people's money and they're accomplishing nothing. And it's a really unfortunate thing in other ways as well, because these neocon flakes can actually cause a lot of problems for people. Neocon, neo-hippie, sorry, totally opposite end of the spectrum there. But, I had a good friend. We were going to go to the Great Pyramid, and he has money, so he was going to rent the King's Chamber, and I would drink ayahuasca down there, and I have I guess a history that I'm curious about that could have been very helpful. But he had increasingly been accepting what I consider to be, going off the rails on the woo-choo train sort of stuff. And I'm gonna give you guys an example of this particular scam, and how destructive it is, because you're very likely to run into it. So what happens? Someone may. Oh, what is this? Why do we have so few folks all of a sudden? We were doing fairly well earlier. I think if I post too many times in a day, they stop notifying people or something. I don't know. It's a bummer. Because this is going to be more interesting than the first half. But anyways, let's say you have been drinking ayahuasca, and you're becoming very interested in shamanism and curious about the possibility of past lives and all of these things. And so you go to see a psychic. And the first thing the psychic does is tells you something you want to believe. That way, they have leveraged themselves into a place of trust with the client, because you want to believe the shit that they're saying to you. So, there's a short interview, brief conversation. The person says, yeah, I've been drinking ayahuasca, and I'm interested in shamanism and blah, blah, blah. And the psychic says, I'm getting that you were a great shaman in your past life. And, so they tell you something you want to hear based on the information you've given them. So now you're invested in believing what they tell you. And so this particular individual that I had this falling out with over this, he had this tendency to go into a shadow self and completely become that without any awareness of it, and he would not recall it. And he was like 6'7" and huge muscles, totally gentle, to the point of almost being it's like too much, but huge, definitely capable of doing damage. And he would get shifty all of a sudden. And later, when I talked to him about it, I said, I think you just have a fragmented psyche, and your shadow's not integrated at all, blah, 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 standard thing. And he just said, it never occurred to me that I even had a subconscious. And so the ground is set for this to be an accurate analysis of what's happening. But so he tells this psychic woman about this, and she says, no, there's a spiritual attachment, and this behavior is not yours. It is this being that has attached itself to you. And, this shadow was a different part of this person, but it was 100% his personality. There was no being attached to him. And for only, $5,000, I can wiggle my fingers around to remove the spirit and free you from it. And so now this person is called me, because he didn't believe me at first that he was even doing this shadow shifting thing. And he's saying, this woman has revealed to me that it's this spiritual attachment that's causing these behaviors. And so he's speaking in a way that he's like, it's clear that he's not taking any responsibility for this. It's not his fault. It's not part of him. Doesn't need to do shadow work. Doesn't need to, do anything to resolve this. Just got to have this woman wiggle her fingers around and chant some mumbo jumbo with a newspaper wrapped around her head so she looks like she is deep. And maybe a can of foaming goo. And so, this woman drove a wedge between my friend and I, because when I pointed out to him, you're being scammed, you're not thinking clearly, he cuts me out of his life. So this woman is lying to make money off of this guy, and she has pushed a wedge between him and a sincere friend that was really trying to help him through this. So, I'm just trying to give you guys an example. People talk about the, sexual assault that happens at ayahuasca retreats, and all sorts of other abuses of power that shamans commit from time to time. But there are other, almost more insidious, at least in the sense that they're subtle, ways that these sort of insincere practitioners can cause a lot of destruction and confusion. And, you know, this is another reason why I do not go the superstition route. I am not working with spirits, you know. People say, well, you call yourself a shaman, but then you don't believe in spirits. I don't actually call myself a shaman, really. Other people do that, including indigenous people. And I've studied it in every culture on the planet for, you know, however long. So if I wanted to, I would. But I think of myself more as a magician. But even in that context, I still orient everything around the real world. You know, in the Western mystery tradition, there's something called the law of necessity. The more modern versions of the mysteries call it the principle of sufficient reason. And it's something kind of like Occam's razor, but it means that everything that exists has to exist, or it wouldn't exist. And so we see particles likely giving rise to consciousness. We have a brain that is loaded with magnetite. And what would that do? It would create a very dense point in that field. And this is what gives symmetry and order to the field that gives rise to our consciousness. So we would not have physical bodies unless they were required to sustain this kind of highly ordered consciousness. There's a reason why we exist. There's a reason why there's magnetite in our brains. There's a reason why we have microtubules slurping up light. All this is happening for a reason, you know. And this is actually a huge misconception for most people, that they think that indigenous people throughout the world believe that there are two different worlds, a spirit world and this world, and that is actually largely untrue. Travis, I'm not in California, but it's largely untrue. A lot of the indigenous groups, actually, it's just one world, including Carlos, the Matsis. I don't know if you guys saw my kambo video that just came out today. But yeah, the Matsis, it's one world. And these exchanges, they're not really shaman in their tradition. I mean, they have kambo and they drink sananga. They don't do ayahuasca. I refer to them as a healer. But it's much closer to just this idea of an exchange of energy than it is to, working with spirits and ghosts and whatnot, So part of the reason I was saying that I frame these things the way I do is I have not seen any good come from superstition ever. And the mystery tradition that is really my primary fountain, I guess, or if I had to identify with something, that's what it would be, the mysteries. Nothing good ever comes from superstition. We have people believing that they have parasitical spiritual entities that almost 100% certainly do not exist. And they're blaming all of these shitty behaviors on these imaginary beings. And then, the shaman, who probably isn't even a real shaman, wiggles his fingers around, or the psychic, or whatever it is, and mumbles some mumbo jumbo, and extracts this parasitical entity from this person, whose behavior then worsens because they believe they have been fixed when absolutely nothing has actually happened. And then now you have this totally aberrated, narcissist, sociopath, whatever their deal is, thinking that they're cured and whole now and they can become a shaman or whatever. I mean, this is not the way for me, I'm not interested in a real life Dungeons and Dragons, or what is it, like Magic the Gathering. Reality is reality, And if you have psychological aberrations and traumas and stuff, it is true that just being in the presence of someone who is illuminated and who has emptied their soul of the garbage and hatred and apathy and, you know, all of these kind of things, just being in their presence, certainly hearing songs can heal psychologically, emotionally. You know, there are all sorts of action at a distance type phenomena that are real. You know, there are, I'm sure, almost an infinite number of surprises that the universe has potentially in store for us. But the universe operates within certain parameters, and for good reason. So that's one of the reasons I've kind of branded myself, you know, woo-free spirituality, because I know, for example, that NMDMT does actually literally activate your pineal gland. Because I drank ayahuasca once, and I could see through my forehead. And there was also very explicit instances of telepathy that occurred while that was happening. And so we have this sort of double, you know, two birds, one stone kind of scenario. And it is connected to the neovisual cortex. And, you know, so I hope I'm making this clear enough. There is magic, and there is a universal mind. And, well, to say there is magic, the phenomena that are associated with magic, such as manifestation, within much greater limitations than most people try to sell these days. You know, these things are real, but there is a way that they happen. And all of these things can be understood, you know, in a rational sense. This is another one of my huge pet peeves and why I have few friends in the spiritual community. The idea that the mind is the enemy, that you have to transcend rational thinking in order to have spirituality. And from my point of view, if you have to transcend rational thinking in order to believe something, it's probably not true. It really is that simple, you know. And I think one of the tricks of being a shaman or a magician that is so fucking important is that you have to be an iconoclast. You cannot care what other people think. You have to realize that if a majority is saying something, the fact that a majority is saying it is more of an indication that it's not true than anything else. You know, most popular ideas are popular because people want to believe them, not because they're true. So, you know, we have, and this is something I notice a lot, that when ideas become widespread, people take that as some sort of validation, but it absolutely is not. Definitely isn't. Look at the whole materialistic outlook of our modern culture, you know. How many people in the United States actually believe that voting for Harris or Trump is going to make any difference at all whatsoever? A lot of them. So many of them that it's unbelievable. You know, the fact that they are both completely owned and controlled by the same forces is insanely mind-numbingly obvious. If you understand the function of the propaganda, and it's just all, you know, you can predict the script coming from either side at all times. It's, you know, so ubiquitous belief is no indicator that anything is correct. And so I guess, you know, when we're talking about the syncretism, just to kind of get back on track and sort of sum all this stuff up, you know, my protocol, one of the most important elements of it is to look for consistencies between practices in totally disparate cultures that could not possibly have had any contact at all whatsoever. And, you know, we went through some of that in the last segment of this live stream, the drumming, singing, smoking things, burning a fire, casting a circle, acknowledging the 4 directions, or otherwise establishing 4 points in a square within the circle, the Philosopher's Stone, which contains actually another secret, and since we have brought this up, I'll tell you, because it's quite clever. The Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, I think, is the most brilliant ritual ever constructed by anyone, and I don't think anyone will ever construct a more perfect ritual because I don't think it's possible. Yikes. Alrighty, we got some kind of odd comments. Oh yeah, the LBRP. So casting a circle, acknowledging the 4 directions, right? I'm not getting into all the details of it. I've made videos about it, but just this one thing that is incredible. And you see it when you see the Philosopher's Stone, but because of the way it's drawn, people don't really quite get what they're looking at, I guess. I mean, I didn't for a long time. Okay, so you have the circle that is the universe, and you have the 4 corners, and you have the magician standing in the center of this, right? And where's his eye? So you have a 2-dimensional circle and 2-dimensional surface where there are points, but then you have this line in the center, and then you draw a line from each of the corners of the squares, and you have consciousness. And it is the addition of consciousness, the eye at the top of the triangle, that allows you to have now a 3D inhabitable space and makes the universe real. And this is one of the great clues that the ancients knew, that it was awareness itself that was the progenitor of all things. Pan, the progenitor. And then, we see it in micro, 2 eyes, the triangle with the 3rd eye, 2 points, and then we add the other dimension and the 3rd eye, which is indicative of this higher consciousness. So, yeah, just a brilliant, brilliant ritual. But since I went off on the LBRP rant, I totally forgot what the fuck I was talking about otherwise. Basically, the task of the modern magician, in the new paradigm, to me, it's about moving forward. And I have all the respect in the world for these older traditions that I have learned a tremendous amount from, and I had so many incredible experiences. I've really been lucky that I've been able to find people that were not affected by the industry. When I was in Ecuador, learning from people like Mama Celia, that she grew up in caves and lagoons and didn't learn to speak Spanish until she was 17. I definitely profoundly appreciate those things. But I don't think that we are obligated, nor is it wise for us to just completely adopt their beliefs about how these things work and what they mean. That's not on the table for me, And I think it's our job to, learn those things and maintain a clear awareness of what they are and why they are to the best of our ability. But then we have to take it further for ourselves, And so looking at the role of a shaman or a magician in any culture, they're the guide, they're the healer. That's basically the 2 main functions of this individual. Usually an artist as well. The shaman conjures through art. Aleister Crowley once said, "There's no better way to invoke the gods to physical appearance than through art." There's also a clue to what I'm saying here for all of you guys out there. What was he saying exactly? You don't really invoke gods and make them appear as an apparition. It's not real. If you want to invoke a god, paint a picture. You know, and this is coming from like one of the probably the most famous occultists ever. You know, he took this position as well, that these spirits are not real in the way that the IRS is real. But so, in order to function that way for yourself and for others, your primary charges are to know yourself and to know the universe that you are attempting to relate to. You know, self-knowledge is the advice of Socrates, Plato, Crowley, you know, on and on, all throughout history. The smartest people, the seers, the prophets, you know, these types of folks, they told you to know yourself in one form or another. You know, the self-knowledge, self-awareness, and then it means so much more than just paying attention to your proclivities, your tastes, your, you know, your idiosyncrasies. It's really deeper than that. And hemisync, for example, the or if you want to use Jungian terms, the fuck is it? Individuation. But, you know, developing more awareness of the dark parts, the unseeable, to shine the light in the places where we have been unable or unwilling to look, through whatever means necessary, to introduce the light into these places and dissolve the shadows therein. The process of creating this unified, holistic mind in yourself is really another macrocosm event, you know. And what we have to never ever forget about this is that the process of making our own minds holistic by creating a greater dialogue and awareness between the subconscious and conscious mind primarily, you know, this is the biggest deal. This is what is really meant by awakening, you know, that you are conjuring the automata, you are constraining the demons of the automatic subconscious part of your being to work for the light, which means the conscious awareness. And the universe at large is doing this as well. These things, there's no way to separate them. There's no way to separate them. These revelations about light and the microtubules in the brain and entangled biphoton pairs giving rise to consciousness and all this, these are the kind of revelations that are indicative of the universe reaching a higher level of consciousness. That's what these discoveries in these microcosms known as people, which are really the sentient organs of the universe, that's what they're facilitating for the universal mind. So I hope that I got that across. It's, you know, it's unspeakably important to really realize that the universe is waking up just as we are. And it's not the first time this has happened, I don't think. You know, we have the blinking of the eye of Shiva from the Hindus, you know, that when God sleeps, the universe is, and when it wakes, the universe is destroyed. The blinking of the eye of Shiva. This alternation from systole to diastole to expansion and contraction. We're doing this, the universe at large is doing it, and individuation is the key, you know. So that fact is essential to understanding why I have this syncretic approach and why I think you should too. You know, that this knowledge of the physical world and the allegories that are that can be extracted from it, that can be observed, the reading of the book of nature, which is really what shamanic sight is, For example, when we talk about shamanic healing and identifying plants in the jungle, the ayahuasca the shaman drinks shows him what plant he needs to cure his patient, because it transforms into a snake or, whatever animal or something indicative of the illness, and then he knows, oh, that's the plant. But you know how that happens? Every living tissue, every living plant or animal tissue that contains DNA emits something called a biophoton at a rate of 100 per square centimeter per second. And research has been done that has shown that interspecies communication via the DNA happens via these biophotons. So the ayahuasca brings down filters in the mind and engages us with the electromagnetic field in some more holistic sense. And so the mind is able to communicate to the shaman via the reception of biophotons into his DNA, what plant to use. And that's how it takes the shape. There's a mechanistic basis for it. That's what's happening. I would bet my testicles that that's what's happening. So, that shamanic sight, though, another aspect of this, another level of it, is that we learn to read the expressions of the universe as allegories. A little while back, I was mentioning this Flaming Lips song where he says, he's talking about everyone dying, everyone someday will die. But then he says, you realize the sun doesn't go down, it's just an illusion caused by the world spinning around. And then we have all of these associations with our own consciousness, the soul, the S-O-L, the sun, our own soul, S-O-U-L, put you in soul, and you have the individual unit of consciousness. And so this fact that the sun doesn't actually die like the ancients thought, they thought that it went down and it died, but really it's just an illusion. So therefore our own death is probably an illusion. The universe is one thing doing one thing, as above, so below. All of these kind of correspondences are indicative of an underlying truth. That was not the tangent that I had planned. However, what I was actually thinking about is, the task of the modern practitioner. And this isn't even, it's wrong to even say that. In the Western mysteries, the magician's job was also scientist, and the alchemist was the precursor to scientist. This actually isn't a new development. This is more of an archaic revival. This is more like going back to your roots, But the tendency that we're seeing for people to realize that mechanistic, deterministic, random, meaningless universe was not correct. And so they pivot 180 degrees and they become, mystics that are so open-minded that wind is whistling through their ears. And we have all of these, just completely superstition-based resurrection of archaic beliefs that don't serve anyone. This is not, it's the pendulum swung too far this way, and so it swings too far that way. That's what happens when extremes are introduced into a system, And so this blind abject materialism it provoked people to swing too far in the atheist direction, after people getting burned at the stake and gays getting beaten up and all this kind of crap. And so it swings back too far in the other direction and everyone becomes atheists. And then it swings too far in the other direction, and we have a bunch of flaky, new agey, neo-hippie, that shit. And so the answer is always that the truth lies in the middle. That's it. The truth lies in the middle. And so to find that middle, you study the sciences, you study psychology, you go through a process of self-purification that has to do with knowing thyself. The reality is that people focus on all these traumas, and that's good. You have to deal with that stuff. You have to get it sorted out. But one thing that I notice is that because I think of the profit motive, people are not talking about thinking objectively. They're not teaching people that are trying to get into spirituality to think critically. They're not provoking them to really analyze themselves. There's too much politesse, people being polite. And there's also the simple fact that when you tell people things they don't want to hear, they tend to stop paying you. And so we have this completely candy-coated, culture of pop culture spirituality that is just not really doing anything for anyone. It's making things a lot worse. And I guess this has been a very long-winded way of telling you that if you're serious about this kind of stuff, if you really want to make genuine progress and to understand the universe in a profound way and have the power to help to heal other people and to illuminate your fellow man and all of these things, it's going to take a lot more work than just sitting around doing holotropic breathing or, none of these practices on their own, in my opinion, are sufficient to really catapult a person to the perspective that's really required to be effective as a magician, shaman, whatever it is. There are very murky waters. It is a sticky swamp, and you really do need to have a skill set that includes intellectual aptitude. You have to study chemistry and philosophy and everything that you can possibly use. The way Crowley put it is that, the student should pursue things according to his own ingenium, but do not become a theosophist. And a theosophist is the old school word for what I would call flaky, new agey, neo-hippie types. Armchair magicians or whatever. This is really the best advice that I can give. And it's something I see constantly with my own clients, that they are more than happy to drink ayahuasca and to eat mushrooms and to do all these things. But then when I say, well, you need to start reading some physics and, actually learn mathematics and all of this sort of stuff, they're not really trying to hear that, And what happens if you expand your consciousness without creating something to leverage it in to make investitures to ground out this development? You're expanding, but it's all air. You have to create the foundations to support this expanded structure. Otherwise, it will just topple over. And, as I was saying, that's the kind of reality that almost no one wants to hear. But it's it's true. I don't think that it would fall under the category. He's asking if the dialogues with plants and animals fall under the category of epigenetics. I guess so. I mean, you're going to retain it probably, and it'll be passed on to your. Here's an interesting thing along those lines, though. All right, so we have seen Darwinism sort of taking backslide. It's not that it's falling apart. It's not that it was wrong. I never thought it was wrong. I don't, but I didn't think it was right either, because to me, it's obvious that nature knows that something is looking, and it's responding in kind. The idea of random mutations as a complete and total explanation for life and the universe and everything does not work. And it's terrifying to me that it's like suddenly there are so many scientists and evolutionary theorists and evolutionary biologists and stuff, just all of a sudden like, you know what? This pretty obviously doesn't make any fucking sense. And some of them are admitting to having been laying awake at night thinking about this shit for... What the fuck was that? I don't know what that was. You know, for decades, there was one paper I read, the guy was saying that this has kept me awake at night. And they don't want to say anything because they don't want their colleagues to ostracize them and to laugh at them and whatnot, which is crazy, you know, that... we have all these arrogant asshats running around, you know, all the muggles and normies of the world laughing in the faces of people like me that are pointing out the obvious. And the people that actually understand the things that they're pretending to understand don't even believe the things that they're, you know, so the muggle laughing at you is so convinced that, you know, that's... I always suspected that, but until recently I wasn't really sure that that's actually what was happening. I go off the deep end again. Lamarck, but yeah, so that basic thing that Lamarck is, epigenetics is related to that, I guess. But what I was saying is that we do all have a common ancestor, right? Like the evolution and the way that they've tracked our DNA and stuff is not incorrect. It's just that it's not blind and random, and it sucks that they hated to admit that there was some sort of fundamental intelligence in the process of nature. I mean, I just, like, why? How could you convince yourself of that even? But I had a thought about this today. Someone recently asked me about how to find out their spirit animal and their totem animal. And it occurred to me that we may get to the point with like CRISPRs or something, you know, like some equivalent of Ancestry.com, right? That was acquired by Blackwater, which is owned by BlackRock, by the way. So now this corporate conglomerate of State Street, Vanguard, and whatever the BlackRock has your DNA if you've ever used Ancestry.com. Isn't that fun? But I think you could probably find a genetic connection that would tell you that, like, for me, it's always been the anaconda, you know? And I have a funny feeling that there's something in our DNA that would establish that connection if it could be analyzed in enough depth. You know, that your spirit animal is actually lurking in your DNA. And it's actually kind of an interesting story. The woman who asked me that, we were up on a mountain drinking San Pedro, or we had drank San Pedro, and we were trying to walk up to these lakes, and we didn't make it because I'd never been there before, and I just said, well, you want to try, you know, to go? And we started walking up, and this very traditional Quechua woman comes up, Quechua speaking woman, and she's like, where are you going? And I was like, up to the lakes, and she just looked at me like, oh, that's cute, gringo. No, you're not. But we tried anyways, and we made it up to, you know, apparently pretty close to him, according to this guy that showed up. But we're sitting there, and we hear this meow, and I'm like, what? We're way up in the mountains. Why is there a cat? And so she had said she thought her spirit animal was ocelot, and that she had been sleeping in a sleeping bag in Sonoma, and this ocelot had come up and licked her forehead. And I said, well, you know, that's pretty far out that an ocelot would lick you on the forehead. So if you have a spirit animal that, you know, I would suspect that's that's probably it, you know. And so I turn around and I look up the hill, and there's this cat, and it's clearly too big to be a house cat. But I'm thinking, do ocelots meow? And probably not, because meowing is actually a device that cats have evolved to use specifically with humans. They don't meow at other cats. It's just for people, generally. So, you know, ocelot's not going to meow. But the cat was too big, and so I walked up the hill, and it was also a strange circumstance that it wasn't moving at all, like not at all. It was frozen solid, not moving, and the sun was behind it, so I couldn't see the pattern of the cat. So that's why I had to walk up and look at it. So I started getting closer to it, and I realized it has spots. And it kind of looks like an ocelot. And it hit me that this was a hybrid. We're up in the Andes where there are ocelots around, and this house cat is too big and has the pattern of an ocelot, but kind of looks like a house cat, and that's the only explanation I could come up with. And so that sort of thing is on a completely different level, though, than this possible epigenetic communication with animals. But that's not really what epigenetic refers to. It's the biophoton phenomena. What's really interesting to me about it is that light can carry information. And not only that, but light can carry organic information, that a packet of light could be emitted from a Venus flytrap and be received by the DNA of a human, and the DNA in the human is the same DNA. So it understands this information. But the fact that the light can carry it at all is mind-blowing. It really just... when we think about transference of information via radiation of any kind, obviously we're assuming that some intelligence has integrated the information into this radiation somehow. But then in the case of DNA, what is the operator? Who is the operator? It's really an extraordinary thing. And by the way, the part of this mystery, in case you're unaware of this, is that DNA in a human is not different than DNA in a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's just that different buttons are pushed. The alphabetical sequence is different, but it's the same DNA. It's the same DNA in a cat, same DNA in a person. It's just that the code is written differently. So yeah, let me see if there's any more questions. Jeez. Yeah, and if you guys have questions, please also consider becoming a patron, or you can support the channel via the options in the chat. We're demonetized, so I get no support unless you guys support me. There's something else speaking of light, let me see if I can communicate this. Consciousness I was told many years ago in a meditation, I thought nothing is faster than light. And this voice in my head said consciousness is faster than light. And I thought, that sounds right, but I don't know what that means. And so now that we are finding evidence that consciousness is arising from entangled biphoton pairs emitted by neurons, entanglement is faster than light communication. So it hit me that the only thing that is not constrained by the laws of the universe is consciousness. So the implications of some connection to divinity, or it being of a higher nature or not of this world, is like, the only thing is that it's not certain yet that it is these entangled particles that generate consciousness, but I'm sure of it. I mean, I will go ahead and make that prediction, and I'm totally confident about it. But think about that. If true, consciousness is the only thing in the universe that is not restricted by the same laws that everything else is. for me, this is a massive, the implications of it, are tremendous. All right, guys, you got any questions? Is it getting late? I feel like I've been on for like 2 hours, 10:30. I have quite a few new videos that I have to finish. We went to a place called Sacsayhuaman, which this is really actually weird. But Sacsayhuaman sounds just like sexy woman in English, and it literally means, is it satisfaction? Satisfaction through flesh. Sacsayhuaman. What a world, right? And at this particular Incan ruin, there is a pyramid-shaped mountain peak that you can see from the top center in a circle. There's a big circle that used to be a tower, and I'm sure, back in the day, the real objective on the solstice was to go up to the top of this tower, and then it really would have been perfect. But I guess on the solstice or thereabouts, the sun rises in such a way that for a few moments, it is the eye on top of the triangle of this perfectly pyramid-shaped mountain. And so we walked around with this shaman at these ruins for an hour or so, and he told us lots of interesting, supposedly old Incan beliefs that had been passed down verbally, and some of it I don't know if I believe, honestly. There's actually going to be a disclaimer in the video saying, with all due respect, I don't endorse necessarily the history that's being given here as being factual, partly just because I don't want to get in trouble. YouTube seems to just want to violate you for anything they can possibly find these days. But, he said that the ruins are actually 50,000 years old, and that the whole history that was given by the conquerors and the church and stuff is not true. And I don't doubt that one little bit, but I also don't know if I believe that these ruins have survived 50,000 years in an earthquake zone, like Cusco. So who knows? I mean, they're remarkable places. If you've never been here, I would definitely recommend it. The monolithic stones actually are cut more accurately than in Egypt. And this is another thing, kind of coming from the opposite part of the spectrum. He was saying that there's argument about how these monolithic stones were created. Hell, I could probably pull up some video, some unedited video, and show you guys, but I won't. We'll wait. Gotta wait for the video. Yeah, so they're massive, and they are more accurate than the pyramids. The cuts are. And it doesn't make sense looking at them. Like, it's not like a, straight cut and a straight cut. There will be these weird, wavy lines, and both rocks will be totally laser precise. Like, you can't fit a razor blade between them. More accurate than the pyramids. And no one knows for sure how they made them or how they did it. And also, some of them at the Huacas above Cusco. If you come to the retreat, we're going to go there in both September and November, and I'll show you these things. But they look like fingers have been dragged through the rock, and it's lots and lots of them. Definitely nothing natural. So the rock would have had to have been soft, and there are these massive limestone pieces. And also there are shapes and cuts in places you can barely even reach that don't make any sense. There's no possible use or function for them. It's really bizarre stuff. But one of the theories is that the limestone was crushed and then reconstituted with some kind of bonding agent. And so when you look at these larger pieces of limestone, there are no fossils, there's no calcite, there's no quartz, there's nothing in there. And if you look around on the ground at the limestone that isn't part of these structures, there is limestone and, fossils and calcite and other stuff. So it's a tremendously weird mystery, and I'm glad that we had the shaman to walk around with, because there are animals and stuff also that are made out of stones in the walls, and I never would have noticed them. Anyways, watch out for that video. It's pretty interesting stuff. So, do we have any more questions before I pop off and work on my videos? I don't really know if I even tackled the subject that I had planned on getting into today. Honestly, we had a really late night the other night, and I slept most of the day and just woke up and thought, oh man, I got to try to get my head clear from this nap and jump online. So I think if I was a little bit more unfocused tonight than last time, it's because I just woke up at 9 o'clock at night or whatever. I have a bit of lag, so that's why I'm giving you guys a minute to pop your questions in. I know there were a few more things that I was thinking about that I have not gotten to, but... All right, going once. Going twice. Oh, well, actually, I do kind of recall something that I didn't really cover much. And, well, no, I did, right? I did. You have to study psychology. You have to study mathematics. You have to study physics, in order to be what I would consider an effective modern version of the shaman. But I think I actually did say all that. So I'm just going to give you guys a few minutes to ask questions, and then I'm going to go edit my video, I guess, if we're done here. Okay, do we have anything? No, I don't see anything. So, I guess thank you guys for spending this time with me. If I didn't actually cover the subject matter that you were expecting, I'm not entirely surprised. And we will keep going with this theme, but, as I said earlier in the stream, for me, it's really more about expanding consciousness in general and understanding the universe and, trying to mitigate our ruin, to stay the reading of our swan song and epilogue. And it pains me to see how much human potential is wasted needlessly in this world because of a lack of direction and awareness and important knowledge. And when I see the damage that it's done to the human race and see us on the brink of actual extinction because of it, and then over even the last year, I've become increasingly aware that we actually did know almost all of the stuff that we now are uncovering, with science, the fundamentals of it, the path to spirituality that is not religion, the mystery schools of Greece and Babylonia and whatnot, they had it. They knew. And one of the reasons that I think it was Alexander, or no, it's not Aristophanes. Yeah, Aristophanes, I think. I think it was Aristophanes that when in the 4th century, the Roman government wanted to ban the mysteries, they took it underground. And Aristophanes wrote that without the mysteries, the human race will be lost, and our destruction will be assured. And he was not wrong. He was not wrong. You know, the loss of this kind of knowledge and the disconnect from our purpose, both on micro and macro, it's terminal. And the resurrection and reintegration of this kind of thinking is the only way that we will restore ourselves to our proper station and sovereignty. And, you know, it's true, I think, that we have more potential than ever. Evolution is real, and it's not disrespectful to our ancestors to say that we're going to take things further. It's our duty and necessity. And we are incredibly well equipped at this juncture to step into a role of godlike power. And if the lessons of history are well learned, we can wield that power beneficently. It's not even that difficult. It really isn't. At first, it is. I certainly made a mess of things at the peak of the last Phoenix process, the last 11-year cycle. And we are 1 year away from the peak of the next one. Let me see, what month is it? August? So yeah, a little bit less than a year until the peak of the next solar cycle. And so for all you budding and aspiring magicians and sorcerers and whatever out there, this is your time to shine, quite literally, you know, to connect with the soul, the S-O-L, to connect your S-O-U-L to the S-O-L, and create your reality and yourself in accordance with its highest potential. This is the time. Over the next 10 months, you will be better able to progress and to manifest. Not necessarily your desired reality, but your quintessential reality. So get to work, bitches. Yeah, somebody was asking if I could give a list of mathematical subjects and whatnot that are good to study. But you know what I did last year? Honestly, I just I found Professor Dave's like Fundamentals of Mathematics course, and I just started at the bottom. And I thought that I would, you know, I stopped going to school when I was like 13 or something. I mean, I never even, I couldn't remember if I even learned long division or anything. And so I started going through the course and got to trigonometry or something in like 4 hours. And, you know, I think part of the reason that 2 4-hour sessions, I guess, over 2 days, and each video is only like, you know, 9 minutes long or something. And but that's what I did. I actually just started doing math, you know, and that's what I mean. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but it's difficult to articulate. But for example, you know, calculus. When the brain has these maps of these patterns and shapes, it allows you to think in ways that are based on those influences that are not available to you otherwise. You know, and I think that's one of the things that people miss about education, that it's not just about learning the thing you're learning. It's about creating these different contours and angles and patterns in the mind, because your mind is holographic and it can apply lessons learned from any area to every area in surprising ways. So just as psychedelics kind of force the brain to upgrade the hardware in order to deal with the incoming software, you know, the program that it's running, the brain has to, you know, enhance neuroplasticity and increase neurogenesis in order to adapt the hardware to run the new program, right? Because it's like trying to run an app for an Apple iPhone on a 1984 Commodore. If you don't upgrade the system, it's not going to happen. The same thing happens from learning mathematics and philosophy and geometry and all of these kind of things. Somebody's asking me, my audio's distorting, like is it clipping? Hello, 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 hello. It's not. Hello, 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 hello. Oh, my monitor's not working. That's great. Huh. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. Dissociative disorder from ayahuasca. I don't think the ayahuasca did that. It probably is a matter of unfinished work. You have something unresolved that you have not been able to integrate. I don't have enough information to even begin to guess what that might be. But when people get stuck in parts of the process, that's usually what it's indicative of. Something has been stirred up, but it has not been processed and settled. So, you know, I offer consultations if you want to go deep and try to figure that out. Otherwise, you know, I can't really give any advice without a lot more information specifically, you know, because this is kind of an abstract that could be all sorts of different stuff. But just generally speaking, you need to figure out what is unprocessed. And one of the ways to do that is to, if you can remember the particular experience where this problem began, if there is an isolated thought or experience that you can recall that initiated it, you know, and it shouldn't be that hard to pinpoint that. So I would say it's not just ayahuasca doing something to you. In fact, that's not really how it works. It's that it uncovers things that are lurking under the surface, and now, opens a door, and now you have to figure out how to deal with it, whatever it is. So that's the best I can do with that much limited information. You have to figure out what was stirred up in the pot and then not put in its proper place. This is another reason why, I advocate so much for the holistic syncretic approach for a modern shaman, or healer, or whatever word you want to use. You really, a lot of people go to these ceremonies and stuff, and you just drink with someone, and then that's it. Then you go home, and that's not right. That's not right. All of my clients, I'm still in touch with. We pretty much become family after they come to a retreat to an extent. Everyone comes back too, I've noticed. The person that just left is coming back already for the next one. But the point is, I spend time getting to know people first, and then I continue to interact with them for, as far as I can tell, forever, so far. That's kind of the way it needs to be, until everything is integrated and sorted, and, you can't just do that to people and then set them adrift. It's just not. Think about it this way. Traditionally, people did not drink ayahuasca. Only the shaman drank ayahuasca. This is not something that everyone should just be doing and then not having any, understanding of psychotherapy or psychology or, this is all sorts of stuff that you should know in order to put all this stuff in its proper place after an experience like that. People are oftentimes, I think, not really fully equipped to manage having the parameters of their perception and their experience re-established, along different lines. And that would never happen, in a traditional setting. In the Western mysteries, when the kaikian was consumed, this was never before. First of all, there was a 4-year probationary period, 3 to 4 years, and in 2 years at least in the outer school. And then maybe if you met certain criteria, you would be allowed to drink from the kaikian. But it wasn't just like, pay me some money and then you can do this no matter who you are. That's not how, and I'm not trying to say that you're not, this person asking this question is necessarily doesn't have the capacity for this experience or whatever, but clearly you were left hanging, without proper integration or support. But yeah, I question whether or not it actually makes sense that people just even have access to this stuff, just your average person. In fact, I see a lot of evidence that it does more harm than good to a lot of people, that their ego just explodes, because they don't have the protocol and they don't have the guidance to navigate it. In the mysteries, there's a hierarchical system, not a chain of command, but there's someone that knew how to evaluate what you were capable of, how much you could be given, and, and then also in traditional shamanic societies, like I said, the shaman was the only one that drank the ayahuasca in many tribes, and they had the support, unless the shaman died before they should, in theory, have the support of an experienced shaman, the new shaman. They're not just getting the drink and then being sent home. It's not what would happen. Okay, so why everyone got a pile on when I'm just about to, let's see. Yeah, so, that's a difficult circumstance. that we don't really have that. And we have an ayahuasca industry that is creating all sorts of just ridiculous wannabes that are the majority of the market, I would say, you know. And when I go to PSOC and I read the flyers they have on the boards everywhere, it's appalling to me. You know, all of this just ridiculous. There was one today, the guy was giving lessons to your dog on spirituality. Like how to I'll enlighten your fucking dog. Like, it's like, and every time I go to that town, it seems like there's some new, ridiculous, useless thing that you can go pay someone to pretend to do to you. You know, and none of it's real. None of it has any effect. I'm sure it's a mess that we have this inundation of mystics with wind blowing through their ears that are defining an entire movement. And part of the reason, honestly, is I think that the almighty algorithm is identifying people that could potentially be real leaders and shadow banning them and prioritizing them in people's feeds and whatnot. Because I noticed a few months ago, really explicitly, thinking about, you know, historically, that when movements have arisen, especially when there is a turbulent period, there are usually leaders that emerge. And I don't see that happening right now, you know? And the few that have really risen to the top of the shit heap, like Teal Swan, are actually dangerous narcissists. So I empathize with people that have to chew their way through this, trying to figure out who knows what they're talking about and, you know, who is legitimate and yeah. So, the way I see it, I guess, the path and duty of the modern shaman is to be just as sophisticated and educated in worldly disciplines of psychology and mathematics and grounded in the rational thought and the ability to think critically and, you know, combining that with the knowledge and the practices of, you know, vibration to alter and to communicate and to integrate different levels of consciousness and to even catalyze physical healing in some cases through these traditional methods. And, you know, the plant medicines and all, you know what I mean? This is the real deal in the modern era. People that are doing both of these things with equal determination and zeal and joy and determination, you know, that's the shit. Don't play with your eyeballs. I did do a video about Teal Swan. She is disgustingly evil and narcissist cult leader for sure. She is not good. I did 2 videos about her. Okay, input, if I can close my eye and use one finger to slightly push the closed eye back and look forward in any corner, I can see a world made of bright yellow gold. You know, I mean, I don't really have anything to say about that. I'm not sure. You know, that sounds like an optical illusion or something. I'm not sure it's meaningful. Anyways, though, it is 11 o'clock here, and I have to go look at a house tomorrow. So I hope this was illuminating for you guys out there, helpful in some way. I don't know that I had any focus tonight and was really able to achieve what I set out to achieve. But nevertheless, I'm sure there was at least some useful and interesting moments. At least I hope so. So do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. We have one spot open for September in the Sacred Valley, and we have November completely open. And then May is already started the book. So, and May will be in the jungle. We're going to do three, because September, November in the Sacred Valley. That's it. And then May in Manu in the Amazon. So, thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. I'm going to go to bed.